For 37 years, he has walked the same path from the river to the cemetery, every day, every season, without stopping. He carries no food, no water, only a book and a silver cross that glints in the light. No one knows where he sleeps, or if he sleeps at all. The children call him a ghost. The elders refuse to speak his name. Some say he's guarding something. Others say he's counting his steps, and that the day he stops will be the day everything ends. But why? Why does he do this? What is he guarding? And what happens when he stops? You can find out by watching the whole movie. Now, let's go. Let's find out. Why does he do this? Why? Because 37 years ago, he made a promise to his dying wife. He would walk their dog every day for the rest of his life. And he's keeping his promise. That's why he walks.
This priest has been walking for 37 years. He's walked through 193 countries and territories, and he has no plans to stop. This is the story of the man who never stops walking. It all started in 1982 when the Slovakian priest had a vision. He was only 26 years old at the time, and he was in his bedroom when he heard a voice that said, "Get up! Get out of bed and walk!" At first, he thought it was his imagination. After all, he was a very religious man and often heard voices in his head telling him to do good deeds. But this time, it was different. This time the voice was clear and it told him to walk around the world. So he did. He walked all the way from his home in Bratislava to the Spanish border, where he turned back after getting a visa. He then walked to the Greek border, where he again had to turn back because he didn't have the right documents. But on the third try, he made it out of Europe and into the Middle East. His journey took him through the deserts of Saudi Arabia and the mountains of Iran. He walked barefoot the entire way and slept under the stars. He survived on the kindness of strangers, often sleeping in their homes or in churches. Along the way, he collected rocks from each country as souvenirs. In 1989, after 7 years of walking, he reached India. He had walked more than 50,000 kilometers by this point, but he wasn't done yet. He continued walking east through Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and many other countries. He walked barefoot and slept in the open, surviving on donations. In 2002, he reached Japan, where he spent several years visiting churches and meeting with people. In 2008, he walked to South Korea. He then returned to Japan and began working with an organization that helps the homeless. In 2012, he visited the United States for the first time. He had wanted to visit the country for many years, but he couldn't afford a visa. He eventually made it to New York City, where he stayed for several months. He then traveled to Canada, where he spent some time in Toronto and Montreal. In 2016, he returned to the US and walked across the country from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. He did this to raise awareness about the plight of refugees. Today, the priest lives in a small cottage in Canada. He spends his days writing, painting, and meeting with people. He has no plans to stop walking anytime soon. In fact, he says he feels like he'll keep walking until he dies. And that's the story of the man who never stops walking. Do you know any other stories like this one? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe and have a great day. They said he had been walking for years. No one remembered when his black robes first appeared. No one knew why he never stopped. He carried no bag, no bread, no medicine. Only a book and a cross that caught the light like a blade. Children stopped their games to watch him pass. Some thought he was a ghost. Others, a messenger. His eyes were not cruel, but they were never warm. They belonged to a man who had seen too much. A man who decided feeling was too heavy to carry. Once, my cousin stood in his way. Her hands, they were cracked and bleeding from the harvest. She waited for a blessing or a word. He did not stop. The old ones whispered that the priest was counting something. Not sins. Not souls. Steps. They said he believed if he stopped before his final step, the world would end. I began to notice something strange. Wherever he had walked, the air felt colder. The grass seemed thinner, as if it bent under a weight we could not see. One evening, I followed him. He didn't turn. He didn't quicken his pace, as if he knew I was there all along. The road led to the old cemetery. He walked between the graves, like reading a list. At the far end, he stopped. His hand rested on one stone. He traced the name with his fingers and whispered, "One more step and I'll see you again." The next morning, he was gone. And the road, for the first time in years, was empty. The old cemetery was at the edge of town. Most people didn't visit it anymore. It was easier to go to the new one, even though the graves were nicer there. But this one held the memories of those who'd gone before us, even if no one came to remember them anymore. I'd even asked to take a look at the place because some of the stones were falling apart. And while I was there, I saw the most peculiar thing. Half of a name was carved into the stone, but it was worn down so much by the rain that only the beginning and the end could still be read. Anna, it said, and beneath it a date. 20 years ago, I had never heard that name in the village, but the priest, he stood there, as if he still knew her, as if she might appear beside him at any moment. He knelt, and his fingers never left the cold surface of the stone. His lips moved, but I heard nothing. Then he lifted his head. His eyes were not empty, as they always were. There was something there. Something that looked like grief. I wanted to leave, but his voice broke the silence. "She was the last one who stopped me," he said. "And the only one I ever wanted to stand still for." He paused, then added softly, "Child, if I ever stop, make sure it's here." That night, I dreamed of him. I dreamed of his footsteps echoing through the empty streets of the village, and of a woman with dark eyes holding his hand. When I went to the cemetery the next day, a fresh bouquet of roses lay on the stone, but the priest was nowhere to be found. Days turned into weeks, but I couldn't get the priest or the name Anna out of my mind. One evening, I went back to the old cemetery to look for them. The priest wasn't there, but the woman from my dream was standing by the grave. She turned as I approached, and I saw that it was her who had carved the initials into the stone all those years ago. "Who are you?" I asked her. "Someone who loved him very much," she replied. Her voice was as worn and weathered as the gravestone. "And you?" she continued, turning back to face the grave. "You must have loved him too." "I loved him," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "But I thought you did." She shook her head. "No, child. You loved him more than I. You felt more than I. If not, why would you be crying now?" I didn't know what to say. I just stood there crying. And as the sun set, I realized that I had found the love of my life in another time and in another place. The shadow in the old stories. After that day, no one spoke of the priest, as if he had never existed. But I could not forget him. Not his voice. Not that look. At Anna's grave, I began asking questions. At the bakery? In the square? At the tavern? The elders looked away. Some only whispered, "He was here before we were." In the town archive, I found yellowed newspapers, photographs of the village, more than 100 years old. And there he was, the same priest, the same eyes, not a day older. A report from 1893 told of a man in black robes who walked the same path every day, from the river to the cemetery. There was an even older mention. A chronicle from 1741. A monk with a silver cross who guarded the soul of the village by never resting. It felt as if I had stepped into a story from which there was no return. One evening, I heard footsteps. Slow. Steady. I went outside. And there, on the road, in the pale moonlight, I saw him again. He walked. And this time, he did not look at the ground. His eyes found mine. "It's almost time," he whispered. Then he turned and vanished into the mist.